the mothers when they want to when they go to they let the baby in the big area, and then they go to now the difference is the mothers will go bed on bed.
everyone, and welcome to the Africam show. Oh, just the perfect place to start. We're up here at El Doño, and I was going to say to you, are you ready to take a trip through very many parts of Africa? Not the whole of it, but at least from East Africa to Southern Africa and a couple stops in between, and we can have some fun. And remember that we're live and interactive, so you can send through questions and comments. I do love to hear from all of you. We have a very pensive giraffe, thinking very carefully about what the rest of the day holds for it. Now, just earlier when we were watching the cams before the show started, we saw a game drive vehicle come through. So maybe it's still in sight somewhere, and that's getting the giraffe's attention. But they generally are pretty cautious around the waterhole. It seems quite nice and breezy today at El Doño. I'm still in the bush myself, and it's pretty breezy today too. Not that the climate is the same across the whole continent. Also seeing a lot of yellowing as I am both here in the bush where I am and at El Doño. Seasons are starting to change, and that's one of my favorite times in the bush, actually. Seeing these transitions. And especially spending many years in the bush and seeing those, how wonderful. Seeing many of those transitions is a wonderful way to collect data in your head. Anyway, we're at Founders now, and this cuteness cannot be stopped. Oh my goodness. Oh, that is too much. Go on, little one. You're safe. Go on. Have a bit more fun. I think we live for moments like this on the cameras. I mean, this is literally right now, live at Founders Lodge in the Eastern Cape of South Africa. It's happening right now. And Mum Margaret is very tolerant of her little calf as it bounds about. A couple huffs. Oh, a couple hops there, here and there, and other cats rolling around. These are such important behaviors. By rolling around and playing like this little calf is learning more about its size, about its weight, about what mum allows, what she thinks is acceptable, what's not acceptable. It's also learning that water holes and mud are nice and cooling. And then also when I roll around, the little itches that I have on my skin, I get satisfied. So there's lots of important behaviors that this calf is learning, even though to us it just seems like a precious and cute moment, which of course it is. And now we just have one of the most perfect bottoms in the bush. Oh, we started off with a bit of a bang. So a couple of hellos have come through while we were enjoying the cuteness. Bridget McKinney is here. You say hi. Hi, Bridget. You have some lime water today. Oh, that sounds very nice. I can't say I have anything here with me to enjoy the show apart from all of you. But I will say that there is some amarula sitting in the corner there that maybe would be great for a sundowner a little later on. Zygote, you say namaste, namaste to you too, Zygote. Thank you for hopping on. Dear NC says good morning from Seattle. You've got your hot coffee and you're ready to see what's happening in Africa. Well, here you have it, dear NC. Lots going on. I love the colors here at Founders, and I especially love that we get to have such wonderful rhino sightings at this particular waterhole. And off they've gone. Here, the vegetation does, well, I was going to say it does not look very yellow, but in fact, it does not look very different, is probably the right term, because in the Eastern Cape, pretty much looks like this most of the time. It's not my favorite kind of vegetation. A lot of it is very short and dense. It's sort of this transition zone between the east coast of South Africa, like where we have Tembe Elephant Park, where it's really lush and quite tropical, and then we move further south, and then the climate becomes a little bit more Mediterranean, a little bit um, temperate, and there's a lot of wind, so vegetation also starts to change along the coast. Off you go. So here in the Eastern Cape, you get shorter vegetation, but also a very, very biodiverse area. And I think the fact that we have in South Africa so many different kind of climatic zones and almost micro changes, even with altitude, that it gives us this crown of having three biodiversity hotspots just in a single country. Jan Powers is here too. You say, hi, Trish. You're back in Arizona. You've got your water on hand. That sounds like a great idea. And I'm still looking around and still no water. Casper's third ghost, you say good Tuesday to me and to everyone from a sunny Milwaukee. Ooh, this is it. Casper's third ghost, hot ginger tea, hot ginger and lemon tea ready for the show. That is a winner. Goodness, if I could drink hot ginger and lemon tea with a spot of honey every day, I would. In fact, I could. I just don't always make the effort. Jack de Boer, you say that was a cool giraffe. Certainly was a cool giraffe. Very nice and pale, the one that we were looking at Oldonyo, and also great size, at least from the perspective of the camera. April Owl, you say good morning from, excuse me, from sunny Connecticut. You've got berry muffins and raspberry iced tea, and you're ready for the show. That sounds fantastic. Amberco, you say you're waving hello with thanks and coffee. Great combination. And Kauru, you say, hi Trishala, you're late, but you have milk today. Of course you do. And Zygote, absolutely. This little one is full of beans. This is such a wonderful time to actually watch rhino calves. So Kirst told me that this calf is only about 12 days old. I found them to be really, really peppy in these first couple weeks of their birth. It seems like even when they're just born, I remember seeing a rhino calf that was just born. Its mum still had kind of like mucus and fluids on her behind, but she wasn't seeping, and it was a little dried, so she was probably had given birth a couple days before. And I'd seen this brand new rhino calf, and even then, it was jumping. It actually bolted for my car, and I got a little bit frightened because rhinos generally aren't running towards towards cars unless something is wrong and you need to get out the way. But this rhino calf is still, experiencing the world, and it just came running towards the car. And I thought, oh no, mum's gonna come running too. But luckily, just like Margaret here, mum got baby under control and quickly shuffled it away. So if you were wondering, we have the two cows that we see. Ah, there we go. Here's the reason why. The two cows that we see with calves, one is Margaret and one is Mandy. Margaret is the larger of the two, um, and has a collar. You would have seen it on her wrist. But Mandy doesn't have a collar. So if you're seeing a mum with a calf and oh, I wonder if that's Mandy. That's really interesting. Goodness me, I really wish that we could pick the camera up and look at what's happening over the hill there. But this heron is also a wonderful sight. It's actually not often that you get to hear them. I always like to take the time when we actually see a bird calling. And you might think, well, I can't actually see this calling, but have a look carefully, and you'll see slight movement at the throat. And you might even see the body kind of move to make the sound. Now in this area, I see a lot of black-headed herons. I mean, I've seen gray herons as well, but I feel like I see black-headed air herons more often. And that's what we're looking at right now. At least it looks like that's what we're looking at. It'd be great if we had a side view, but I'm quite sure that's a black-headed heron. So okay, we know that Margaret is larger than Mandy. Mandy has a collar. The first cow that we saw with her tiny 12-day-old calf, and Mandy uh, Margaret doesn't. So that's something to just keep in mind. And I have a feeling that we are seeing both Mandy and Margaret here. If they both came up to the waterhole, that would be amazing. But both of them with young calves, maybe there's a little bit of um, protectiveness, I think, going on here, as most mums would be around brand new babies. Gosh, I really hope that they come through and then we can see those differences, the color, the no color, and also the size difference that would help you out. Also have a look at the calves. Margaret's calf must be a couple months old now. Mandy's calf is still very tiny, just 12 days old. W. Bouchard, you say that calf is adorable. I know. So many beans, like Zygote says. Grumpy old man, welcome aboard. Sad to hear that you had a blueberry muffin, but now it's finished while you were waiting for the show to start. But I do appreciate you sharing your Showtime meal with us. What happened? No more protein shake for you? I wish, or maybe it's not something, maybe it's best left a mystery. But, in my head, I see I know all your names, but in my head, I have an idea of imagining you. And for Grumpy Old Man, after you told me you were you were drinking a protein shake, I had this idea of you being a very buff, grumpy old man. Come on, come out from behind there. Now, another way to tell Mandy and Margaret apart is that Mandy also has a notch in her left ear. Now, notching rhinos is something that's pretty common across many reserves in South Africa, and that's the notching usually happens in a pattern. So if they only have two rhinos, they will only make one notch. So maybe Mandy has a notch in her left ear, and Sally, I'm making up Sally, if there were only two of them, would have a notch in her right ear, and that's easy to tell them apart. But once there is a large population of rhinos, then one notch, two notch, three notch, okay. But once it gets bigger than that, it's difficult to tell them apart. So then there's patterning in the notches. Sometimes it'll be two at the top, one on the side, things like that, that will help us to tell the rhinos apart. And then you'll get even ID books that the reserve might give out so that you can identify exactly which rhino you're looking at. And that's really important to keep tabs on them, monitor them, check on their health. Um, when there's fights, when rhinos can definitely fight, you're able to really keep track of specific individuals, which is very helpful when it comes to conserving endangered species. Well, a really nice herd of elephants, or a lot of them, probably our boys have arrived at Old Donyo. So let's head over and have a look at them. But don't worry, Kirst will be keeping an eye on this camera here at Founders Lodge, and she will let us know if either Mandy or Margaret come back to the water. Someone say party. Oh, you know, when a group of elephant bulls come to the waterhole and they're in the mood for a party, you know it. They are so loud, so much energy, and it's unmistakable. And you can hear this kind of activity for hundreds of meters. It's a great sound out in the bush, and you know exactly where to go when you hear something like this. You follow that sound, and it's unmistakable. I mean, even elephants drinking at a waterhole and they, dribble a little from their mouths, even that sound carries quite well in the right conditions. And the one that's standing in the middle of the water, that's arguably having the most fun, you can see that it has the one backwards facing tusk. I'm sure we've seen this individual before because yes, it's also the one that has a very big tear in its left ear. I used to know an elephant that had that kind of tusk, but it was much longer. It almost touched her left knee. I think it was her left as well. Actually, I can't remember now. But that tusk was, excuse you, but that tusk was so long it almost touched her body. Well, because we know that tusks are essentially they're just modified teeth. So in the same way as humans could get crooked teeth or something moves as the tooth is developing, the same can happen with tusks. So I don't even know what I'd call it. A misalignment like that is usually something that would be the result of very early development. I would say even in utero development. The other thing is that African elephants also have tiny tushes that they're born with. Now, these are not tusks that we can see. They're just kind of placeholders. And they help to correctly align the tusks. So if there's any disturbance in those tushes, that could also result in misalignment. But this female that I knew that had a backward facing tusk as well, we used to call her, I guess we still call her Fang. I just haven't seen her in a long time. Her tusk was so long that it was almost touching that leg, but it didn't. But it wasn't because the tusk stopped growing. It was because it started to slightly turn outward to almost avoid the leg. Again, just like teeth, you put some kind of corrective measure in the mouth, and over time, teeth will correct. Or if somebody has a habit of doing something that causes misalignment in the teeth, then those slow things over time will change the direction of the tooth growth. So I think in the case of Fang, the cow that I knew, I think that she, because the leg was constantly brushing against the edge of the tusk, then the, bless you, the tusk started to move away from the leg. Goodness, he turned and looked at us as if to say, "Excuse me, I didn't see you standing there." Yes, you farted right in our faces, and we're not sure we appreciate that. Grumpy old man, you say splish splash. Exactly. And just like that, all the splish splash is over. A great little bonding session, even though we can't understand exactly what it meant for them, whether they were communicating at the time. But these social events, I suppose, are really important, I suppose, not only for bonding, but also for kind of sorting out the hierarchy, keeping the hierarchy in check. These little, I like to call them appointments, because they seem to do them regularly, is really important for the social dynamics of bachelor herds. And now this giraffe is absolutely shocked. Shooketh, as the youths will say. Because I bet it can count the number of times elephants have moved away from a waterhole as it has approached on one hoof. Usually the elephants give them a very tough time. MG leopard spots, you say when you had your 2 week safari in Tanzania, you never saw a rhino, but you did see heavily armed guards in the Ngorongoro crater. Yeah, I mean, I think you really have to be quite lucky to see rhinos in the rest of Africa. South Africa really is a stronghold for white rhino populations. In fact, it has the largest amount of white rhinos as a country compared to any of the other countries in Africa. So we're very lucky with how well our population has recovered. Even still, a lot of investment has to go into anti-poaching, and this is observations from a country that has a good, healthy rhino population and has a lot of rules, regulations, private companies securing the rhino's safety. And even still, we definitely have a poaching problem. But in the rest of Africa, fewer rhino species, perhaps fewer of those regulations as well. I can't be sure about that. In those areas, it's difficult to see rhino. You have to be lucky. But I think seeing armed guards is is a good thing, but it's also a sign of the problem. Right, here we go. Are you gonna bend? Oh, yep, give it a stretch. That is such a lanky um young giraffe bull. Very thin and lanky. And we're back to the splish splashing. Dr. Boer is just reminding us that elephants have been hunted for their tusks. Absolutely. Elephant tusks used to be a crazy commodity. I mean, piano keys used to be made from ivory. from elephants. It was almost common. When we think of rhino horn, it's it's taboo, it's unacceptable. Even if there are groups of people and cultures that still use rhino horn, in the greater scheme of things and in the majority of the world, it's still taboo. No one's going, if you say that to somebody, oh, you have rhino horn, nobody's going to say that that's acceptable. It's always contentious. But when it comes to ivory in the past, so many things were just made of ivory. It was so commonplace to have ivory jewelry, to have piano keys made of ivory, have ivory insert in um like weapons, handles of guns, knives. It was just so common. And there are even elephants or descendants of elephants from Mozambique who are completely tuskless. So during the time when there was a lot of ivory hunting happening in Mozambique, and remember that the reserves in the Mo or southern Mozambique, those reserves are connected to the Kruger in this transfrontier park. So elephants can move freely between certain parts or the southern parts of Mozambique and into the Kruger area, I should say southwestern parts, uh, and then into the other private reserves that don't have fences to the Kruger National Park. So we get to see the, I guess, the legacy of what's happened in the past with elephants in in those areas in Mozambique. Now, and remember that the elephants that have tusks that are really big and kind of a prize, those would have been the first to be eliminated from the gene pool. Then, once all those big tuskers are gone, what's next? Because the demand is still high. Then it's just elephants with tusks. So those few elephants that had genetic abnormalities or recessive genes associated with being tuskless, those were the ones that survived. So that became a large part of the gene pool of those elephants that survived in Mozambique. And between then and now, you see a lot more tuskless elephants. And that's just because those big tuskers have been removed from the gene pool, essentially. And the tuskless individuals are the ones that remained as a large portion of that population. And those genes were sent through. And because it is a recessive gene, we every elephant is not tuskless. And remember, it's just a small population like that. But because it is a recessive gene, both parents have to possess the gene and pass it on to their offspring. So the frequency has increased. But even still, it is not like a significant part of the population that are tuskless. And that's the knock-on effect of hunting animals for certain traits. Is that whether you like it or not, you are affecting the evolution, um, the status of their gene pool, and that lasts generations. And whether they can recover from that or not is unknown. I have found that tuskless elephants, um, I mean, this is just my experience. I've I've seen two tuskless females often at the reserve, the same tuskless females. And I always found them to be less predictable than the other elephants and a little bit more reactive. Now, whether that's just a coincidence because, I have a sample size of two, it could just be a coincidence. But I think that could also be part of legacy, being persecuted. Somebody just wants to say hello. So the smaller bull is the one on the right. And see how he's wanting to get his trunk close to the mouth of the bigger bull that's on his left. He's kind of saying, "Hey, I'm here. I just want to greet you. I know you're bigger and more experienced, and I know there's a pecking order, so I'm just gonna be normal and greet you by putting my trunk close to your mouth." The bigger elephant did respond by putting his own trunk close to the mouth of the smaller bull too. So many little things. I mean, thinking about elephants hunted for ivory, tuskless genes, and how seemingly small acts can affect huge populations or have a huge effect on populations. And then even here, as we're watching these two interact, we think, oh, it's just a small gesture. But that small gesture, loaded. Got a couple gastro issues today at the waterhole. But I will say it's a win at the waterhole for the giraffes. There used to be like this about a year ago. I used to always comment on how confident the giraffes here are at how confident they are at El Dorado. And then the elephants kind of took over. I think after the elephant incident where it tusked and killed a giraffe right at this waterhole. After that incident, I feel like maybe the giraffes were a little bit more cautious, although I can't say that there were any giraffe witnesses to it, but maybe something just changed. And they used to get pushed out quite a bit. But now the giraffes are back in town and they're just confident. I need to drink and I'm going to drink now. But if you make a move, I might scurry away. And I'm going to pay extra attention to you. Bridget, that's a really interesting point. You say, can it be passed down memory? Talking about the aggressive behavior in tuskless female elephants. You know, interestingly, I just started reading something. Oops, that's not it. I'm trying to get to this. It was genetic memory. That was it. So I just started reading this article on genetic memory. And it's basically memory that's present at birth that exists in the absence of any experience yet. And the phenomenon of it kind of being incorporated into the genome of an animal, and I suppose not just the animal, but their family, incorporated into that specific genome over time. Now, I didn't manage to wrap my head around it just yet, but it is on my plate. I have it literally was reading about it just a couple days ago. In fact, this particular thing I was reading about was with humans. And I suppose it's easier to study this kind of thing in humans because we we know what we remember and we can ask our grandparents what they remember and so on and so forth, and we can better test how those things can be filtered down. So, Bridget, I think that it's not impossible that memory can be passed down. When we say memory or we think about genetic memory, we're not thinking that they can see something that their ancestors have seen or that there's a memory as we would imagine a memory in our heads, like a video playing. Not like that. When we think about genetic memory, with measuring it by behaviors, by fears, those kinds of things. Um, there was another interesting, trying to remember where it was, another thing associated with memory. Ah, it was butterflies. So when butterflies or when caterpillars go through their chrysalis phase and they transform into the butterfly, at that larval stage, they are their entire body are consumed by digestive enzymes. It is literally a soup of the smallest building blocks of life, like proteins and amino acids, the smallest building blocks. And it's just a soup of that. And then it rearranges and we end up with a butterfly. And it is the most amazing, amazing, unbelievable, really can't even wrap our heads around how it happens event. But it should be impossible if connections between synapses and in their neural ganglia, because they don't have brains, that those memory forming connections are also dissolved, right? So they shouldn't have memory. But this particular study found that those caterpillars, if they were treated with, so if they're being fed, or the larval host plants, like most caterpillars have, so those leaves, if you put some kind of bitter thing on those leaves and you make that caterpillar eat those leaves, somehow, as an adult, it seems to remember that, and it should be impossible. But things that lepidopterans learn as caterpillars, even though it all gets chopped up, changed, liquidized, and rebuilt essentially, the adults actually shown to have actually shown to remember those things, which is insane. So, Bridget, when it comes to memory, who knows? Hello, bless Bocky. In and out, very quick. Sorry, everyone. I kind of went off on memory there because it is such an interesting thing. And again, this is not memory like, hey, remember that plant? It was bitter. It's it almost becomes sort of like an instinctual imprint that happens over time. And how that happens, I don't know. But it is absolutely fascinating because ex memory comes from experience, right? So every individual of any animal has a subjective experience. So how that subjective experience translates into memory and how that memory becomes something that could be beneficial to their survival, all these things are oh, just amazing. Well, I see Margaret and Mandy didn't make a reappearance here at Founders, but at least we had a little Bocky and a little Warty. Oh, you were so curious. Where's the rest of your family? Oh, there we go. I really do like Blessbok. I think they're very pretty antelope. Also, like as they move when they have youngsters, they kind of nod their heads to kind of push them. Kind of don't have hands to gather them and usher them along, so you use your head. And this warthog is blending in perfectly. That's the spot, Warty. That's where baby calf was playing too. It's obviously some really nice mud there. This warthog is so well hidden and it's going to look even more like this mud that I think it's going to spook these Lesbos calves. And then just watch it as it goes. Yeah, you gave me a fright, but I'm just gonna watch you. Now, Blessbok are also really interesting because they were almost hunted to extinction. I think that at the most critical point in their existence, there were only something like 30 or 40 Blessboks left in the wild. And it's one of those rare instances where hunting farms did a lot for a population, for a species. Now they're of least concern. There are very many Blessboks, not a concern about them at all. And the way that this happened was that these hunting farms, Blessbok became something that everyone wanted to hunt. And so the farmers actually started to put a really concerted effort into breeding and rearing Blessboks. And they did such a wonderful job, even though the motivation was misguided, in my opinion. But they did such a wonderful job of just lifting up the species. It's such an interesting story, and I think it also speaks to the different sides of contentious issues. Like there's different there are potentially positive outcomes. And I think kind of today, the thing we've learned most is that you never know. Never know how small acts are going to affect the entire genome of a species. You never know what exact conversation is happening between two elephants. You never know whether something that has a is ordinarily seen as wrong and bad, like hunting farms, you never know if they could have a positive impact. And I guess that's nature for you, right? It has the potential to really boggle our minds. Oh, Amberco, that's very, very nice of you. Thank you so much. I could talk about this stuff all day as well. And I must say thank you to all of you because if it wasn't for you and your questions and for you giving me the space and the time to ramble about my interests and about interesting scientific things I learn, um, then I doubt I would be interesting to you at all. So it's very much thanks to you. And also, remember, I think I've been with all of you at Africam for a good couple of years. So you've helped me grow and learn so much. Anyway, on that note, thank you for yet again joining us for the Africam show. I'll see you all on Thursday for Wild Moments. So do tune in. I'm sure it'll be wonderful. There's lots of cool moments that we've seen over the cameras. And continue to watch the cams and look for those special moments like the little calf that we had rolling around in the mud here at Founders. So, everyone, thanks for your questions and your comments. Enjoy your teas, your cakes, your everything that you have, and I think very soon I'm going to enjoy a sundowner. So, bye everyone, and see you next week.